Alexander Volkov versus Ciryl Gane has been scheduled to headline Fight Night June 26th. You'll have the rising Gane against a Volkov who's been managed to string off quite the impressive wins, most recently against Alistair Overeem. It's an interesting matchup, and I'm not sure one many saw coming. Drake, initial thoughts on this matchup. Is it the right fight to make?
Yeah, I think so. And I'm unsure because of the fact that I felt pretty good after Gane and Rozenstruik, and then after Lewis and Blades. I felt like the winners of those fights, should have ended up fighting each other. But now Jon Jones has thrown an additional monkey wrench into the the whole landscape, which is the fact that he presented himself in the first place was why that led me to that line of thinking. Because Derrick Lewis, take Jon Jones completely, entirely out of the equation, Derrick Lewis should probably be the guy to get the title shot next. So the fact that he came in the first place made me think, okay, well, we already knew that he was going to get the winner of Stipe Francis too. Well, now there's complications, going on with that. So at that time, I thought Lewis, Gane, that was the fight to make. Now a little bit up in the air. Lewis potentially going to be the one next in line for the title shot. Regardless, we'll see how that plays out. With all that in mind, this then makes Gane versus Volkov the fight to make. So yeah, I'm totally fine with it. I think it's going to be really awesome. And I think that this is a legitimately probably the best test, at least in terms of strikers, that you could give Gane before he takes on, a former champion. So yeah, I think that this was probably the fight to make. I think it's going to be a great test for each guy's more so Gane than Volkov. And yeah, what was your initial reaction, Pat?
Yeah, so I mean, this fight makes a lot of sense and also doesn't, as you kind of alluded to. With Derrick Lewis and Jon Jones and everything in the air, I think they're basically keeping Lewis open in case the Jones fight can't get done, because then it would make sense for Lewis to get the next shot at the title. But it also kind of leaves, Lewis without a dance partner if Jones gets the title, unless they want to do Stipe Lewis, which isn't a bad fight to make. And, I could see them doing that as well. An interesting way to look at this, though, is that now you have, the top five, or really the top five and the champion, all kind of matched up against each other, right? In some way, if it shows how top heavy heavyweight is. I think Gane has proven himself after the Rozenstruik win that he deserves to be in the elite category of heavyweight, but it's really Volkov, Gane, Lewis, Blades, Stipe, and Francis, right? After that, there's kind of a sharp drop off where Rozenstruik, yeah, he's got some power, but he also looked completely outclassed against Gane, and even looked outclassed against Overeem before that last second Hail Mary. So I like the matchup in a lot of ways. I think it's going to be an interesting test for both guys too. More so Gane. This is one of the hardest matchups I think Gane could go against, mostly because Gane's whole thing is kind of that technique and his kickboxing and sort of an odd striking that really is able to capitalize on people in a way that we haven't seen in a long time. And when you're going up against wrestlers or going up against big power, I think Gane has the advantage there. But against Volkov, who is a sniper, right, who just and has only looked better since his loss to Blades, I don't know how Gane fares if it's going to be on the feet only. I know Gane can take it to the ground. He has before. He's gotten a couple submission wins. But I don't know that he has the technique to get Volkov on the ground and keep him there necessarily. And that's really what's going to be a big question here, because if it's on the feet, I mean, it's going to be a striking war, and I think this could be one of the toughest matchups for him.
No, I 100% agree. And that's the very interesting thing is, we point out how much of a precision, accurate, laser beam type of striker and sniper that Volkov has been, and more so become over time. But you got to remember too, this guy's combinations as a heavyweight, just the fluidity of them and the frequency that when he chains them together and he's on, like, man, that's one of his best aspects. Aside from that accompanied by his accuracy, is just a treat to watch. And because of that, it'll put extra pressure, I think, on Gane, which we haven't really seen any strikers really do to him. And just, the physical attributes too that Volkov presents is always a challenge, especially with his skill set and improved takedown defense. I think that's fair to say. Not that he's got the best or anything, but I think it should definitely be good enough to hold up against Gane. If he can take him down, like you said, that would be very impressive. And just if he can, win most of the striking, I suppose. I just can't see it not being competitive at best for him right now. And that's still good, but like, it's a very tough one. Outside of, if we're not looking at Stipe, Francis, Jones, those guys, outside of them, I'd say Volkov and Blades are probably the toughest matchups for Gane, and for completely opposite reasons, right? So this is a very big test for him, and just something that he very clearly has yet to have fought. And so I'm excited for it. In 5 rounds, that's makes it even tougher for him,
Yeah, no, the fact that this is 5 rounds, it just highlights again that they're really pushing Gane. And I understand it. It makes sense, but it also, let's say Volkov gets this done, and we will do a full prediction video at a later date where we'll break down our picks. But let's say a hypothetical here, Volkov gets this done. Then what do you do with Gane, right? That's the only thing I kind of don't like here, is that then he's kind of left out in limbo. Maybe you match him up with Blades or Stipe, but those aren't easy outs either. And if he loses that one, then you've got a prospect that was on the rise, is still young and has shown some issues, especially against, Tanner Boser, I would say, where he got the job done, but he's still evolving. He's still getting better. If you push him too fast, then you're kind of left in a tough spot for him. So it's an interesting matchup. I do like it. If they're both performing at the highest level, this should be a very fun heavyweight fight to watch. But yeah, gotta wonder if they're pushing the prospect a little too fast.
I mean, that's the weird thing about Gane and kind of fighters who have been in this position in the past, where yes, the UFC has pushed them a little quick, but it's one of the rare times, especially recently, in recent years, we've seen a lot with, I always go back to the women's flyweight division right now. They've really fucked things up a little bit with some of those, pushes there. We won't get into that, but yeah, sometimes though, we see that they are justified. And so it becomes tricky though, as they then get stuck early in that top realm. And I think a good example at heavyweight might be Travis Brown. I feel like he got, a little bit of the push early. I feel like his progression was slower in terms of them getting him to this point that Gane is at now, just in terms of number of fights, technically, looking at it that way. But I think that would be a good comparison. We saw that didn't end up working out. I do think that, well, I don't know. I mean, Travis Brown at his best was pretty good. I was going to say Gane better than Travis Brown, but it's as much as it is Travis Brown, let's give him some respect for at his peak, in his prime, he was pretty talented. But I think similar situations to where when your hype is justified and you are that good, yeah, it's totally fine to push them up a little bit quicker, but maybe even more unnecessary because they'll get there anyway. Just give it time, and then they get stuck and potentially, ruin their career before it gets to that point that it should. Like, look at Travis Brown that way. Just to go back to that comparison, he never really, he didn't stick around for as long as he probably should have,
Yeah, and I mean, Travis obviously had a couple of, interesting gym decisions that could go back to there, and part of his decline. But I'm with you in the sense of, when it comes to building a star, I've said this over and over, and it's been kind of proven, it's one of those things where you get one shot to get the casual eyeballs on you. And if you lose at any point, it's much, much harder to get it back than if you get to that star power and lose once you're at a particular level. And when it comes to Gane, I think about Francis, right? Francis probably was pushed a little bit too early and then lost to Lewis and whatever that fight was. but then after that rattled off an insane amount of KOs and he at least had that tool of always being able to knock anyone out at any moment. So you knew he could always find a way back up pretty easily. Now he's on top. Now he's the champ, but the hype was not the same going into UFC 260. And, afterwards you could say, yes, there is some hype around it, but I don't think it's anywhere near the level that would have been had he won in 2018. And so what I don't want to see is Gane get this push, and then they push him a little too fast when he, again, is developing these skills, might be able to hone them a little bit more with an extra year or two, and he loses, gets stuck in that weird limbo, and then makes his way back up to champion, and there's just no real fervor for him to be the champ and to have that casual eyeball on it. It's an interesting call, but it's also hard to deny Gane's ability, so it's a catch-22.
Yeah, no, all excellent points there, and I'm very fascinated to see how it all plays out for sure. And if he does win, I mean, geez, could be title shot territory, right? And same goes for Volkov. So just from that point of view, is this? It's probably not, a guaranteed title shot next, but one fight away max afterward.
Yeah, it's definitely you're on the cusp if you win this fight for either guy. I mean, especially with the way heavyweight is, as we just covered. I mean, there's 6 guys at the top, and everyone else has kind of gone back and forth with wins and losses, or, nobody's really put together the win streaks at the top or beaten the type of competition that those 5 or 6 guys have. So you've got to imagine, if, depending on the schedule of when Francis fights, who he fights, all of that, when, certain fighters can be ready to go, you've got to think that, they are either going to get a title shot or be right on the cusp. So let us know your thoughts on this matchup. Do you like it? Do you think it should have been Gane versus somebody else, or Volkov versus somebody else? Give us your early predictions if you want. Again, we'll do a prediction video where we break it down later on as it gets closer to the event. But yeah, let us know just your overall feelings about Gane, about Volkov. Is this the fight to make? Make sure you hit the like button, subscribe, bell notification, and I'm excited to see it. I will say that. It is a rare heavyweight, this is going to be a good one. So at least we've got that, right, Drake?
Yeah, more excited for it than the Rozenstruik fight.
Yeah.